Welcome to the very first episode of Small Business Stories. On today's episode, we have Slade Williams, part owner of WPC Services, Royal Tire, and Rick Signs right here in Longview, Texas. On this podcast, we're going to hear real stories from real business owners, so stay tuned and enjoy. This is the first episode of the new podcast, Small Business Stories, and it's all about people who own small businesses, their stories, how they got to where they are, why they're doing what they're doing, how they're doing what they're doing, and kind of everything in between. And so I've got my longtime friend here tonight, Slade Williams, and we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation about Slade's business. I'm probably going to learn things that even after 10 years of being your friend, I don't know about you.
I appreciate your optimism.
So I'm kind of looking forward to this. But Slade, thanks for coming tonight, man. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the invite. I feel honored. First one.
Very first one. So
that's great.
It's either going to be awesome or it's going to really suck and no one's going to care. So I think you said what did you say a minute ago?
It's probably going to suck, but we're going to be optimistic that it doesn't.
That's right.
So,
yeah, we're going to expect the former and hope for the latter.
There you go.
Cool. So, tell us a little bit about where you come from, what you do, who you are.
Well, where do you start? I grew up in a great family. I couldn't ask for a better mom and dad. And I actually grew up not too far from where we're sitting, just maybe 500 yards from here.
Yeah, we can walk up the hill.
And as far as the business side of things, since that's kind of the topic, my dad was a sign maker, and he started his business in 1974. And man, my life was living under an entrepreneur. And on Saturdays, we'd go do jobs, and I was his helper. And the business was a good business. It was a small business. It was a good business. And through that hard work that he put into it, it gave us opportunity to start more businesses.
Yeah.
And we started our metal company in 2009. And that was a tough one. Like, it looked good on paper and everything's great. We spent a lot of money, made a lot of commitments, and then the Great Recession hit when we were opening the door.
Yeah.
And we may dive into that, but that made business hard, and it was very humbling.
So there's already so much that I want to unpack, just in the first minute that you've talked. So I want to go back to 1974, and I want to know, what do you know about why your dad got into the sign business in the first place, and what was the initial idea behind his business? Did he ever tell you about that?
My dad was just an artistic guy, a cut above the rest.
Yeah, didn't your mom and him meet at an art class or something?
Yeah, they both went to Kilgore College, and if I know the story right, they competed for an art scholarship. My mom actually beat them, so kudos, Mom.
So maybe she was the sign person.
Yeah, she should have been.
Yeah,
and he was runner up. So. Both of them they're natural artists, a lot better than I am. My sister gathered most of that talent. Mm-hmm. But he started working for a sign guy named Mr. Molina. And he thought a lot of them.
Now, was this prior to 1974?
Yeah, prior to 1974. So this is how he got into it.
Gotcha.
Before, I guess we should back up a little more. His dad started an auto parts store called Rick's Auto.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember what year that opened. It was sometime in the 60s, I would imagine. And so he was involved. I don't remember him ever really working in that business, although he was there. I'm sure he did several things there, but he never was a full-time employee there. And he had a little stint at the Dairy Queen. I don't know, a little side note about the Dairy.
I did not know that. See, I've already learned things.
Yeah, Sammy Dishman, who was...
Oh, over in Gladewater.
In White Oak.
In White Oak. The Dishmans had both.
Yeah, they probably did. They had several of them. And, I knew Sammy Dishman before he passed away. He's an older guy. And there's a lot of people in the community that think a lot of him. He's a good guy. And my dad worked for him. In White Oak, a little fact, the Dairy Queen in White Oak is the world's largest Dairy Queen.
I think I've heard that before.
And my dad, I don't know why he'd tell me this, but he felt so proud that he could make the perfect ice cream cone. Because at Dairy Queen, they have a little style and little twist at the top.
Oh, yeah. It's like a signature deal.
That was his signature deal. So little time in the auto parts world, little time at Dairy Queen. And then when he started working for this sign company, which is really a one-man band, that's when he started really picking up on the trade. And back then, I mean, there should be a lot of credit given to those sign guys because nowadays a lot of people are going to be sign guys. It's you can buy a plotter.
Yeah.
Software's free in most cases.
Well, it's like a lot of things. Like the barrier to entry in so many things has come down so much. Like doing a podcast.
Yeah, well, here we are. We went on Amazon or something and bought some mics and hooked up to a laptop. Yeah. Which is great. I mean, it provides platforms for a lot of people that, back in the day wouldn't have had the platforms.
But starting a business back in that day was more like going out and like harvesting your own food from the forest and a garden, and compared to today where you just go to the supermarket.
Yeah. Well, and think of it, if you wanted a sign back then, say you had a new business and you have a truck and you have a storefront and you need lettering on both. Well, there's no computers, there's no plotters, no vinyl. What are you going to do? You call the sign guy that can whip out a paintbrush and bring out his palette and put all that on your vehicle, on your building.
It took a real artist.
A real artist. I always had that appreciation for him, which honestly, I never saw much of that because when I was getting into the sign business with him, that's when it started morphing into computers and plotters. But to be the OG, the guy that could really make a sign, I always thought that was cool. And that's probably...
So, how long was it before your dad, was there ever a time where he was going to people's places with a paintbrush and, putting signs on their businesses with paint?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the thing. I'm trying to remember. It was sometime in the 80s when things became more digitized.
It's wild.
But yeah, I mean, growing up in a sign shop, I mean, he still had all his gear. There's paint everywhere. There's kits and brushes, and a sign man and his brush. You think of paintbrush, but no, there's such a variety used for different tasks and what you needed to do. It's a whole different world, and unfortunately, a lot of it's forgotten. There's just a few guys left that do it by hand.
Yeah.
And the one around here he'd more recently passed away. So it's a dying art. I mean, it kind of has to, because you're not going to be a production sign company doing it by hand.
No.
But it was pretty neat to see in the evolution of the sign business. As a kid, I was more interested in the more tech side. And the tech side back then was Windows 95. Oh, I thought a computer with the big screen was awesome. And anyway, we got the sign shop. He brought up to speed. So, and back then, I think he paid me, I don't know if it was $20 for a day to back up all the stuff on zips and floppies because, you didn't have hard drives and servers.
So you were what, 10 years old, 12 years old?
Yeah, probably less than that. I'd probably be lying to you if I try to guess the age, but maybe 10, something like that, 8 or 10.
So you're at your dad's sign shop at 8 or 10 years old, doing installs on Saturdays, backing up files, bringing the computer system online to bring this business into the 21st century.
It was such a, it was an awesome place. His sign shop, so I guess backtracking and fast forward, he worked for the Mr. Molina, and he understood the sign business and what it took to start one. And then he did. And it takes a community to support you. And I remember just some stories, and there's a guy named George Hall we went to church with. Great family, and my dad couldn't afford a shop. He was just starting off, and George had a spot in one of his metal buildings, said, you can set up shop here.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure he charged him rent. He just wanted to see this young man succeed and liked him.
So a dude from church gave your dad a shot free of charge. Just hey, here's a building.
Yeah, I'm not using this back corner. If I'm telling the story right, this is a long time ago now. But that's from what I understand. He he just opened the door to him, gave him a key, and said, "Here, set up shop." And he started there, and then we bounced around a few different buildings, and then more permanently took up shop on Highway 80. We always kind of been on Highway 80.
And so, if somebody happens to be listening to this podcast from outside of our area,
Yeah,
which I don't know who this is going to reach. It may not reach anybody. But we're in Longview, Texas, which is a couple hours east of Dallas and an hour west of Shreveport. And it actually is probably handy to talk about our area just a little bit because, here we're really heavy reliant on like oil field and oil field support companies. And I think you guys kind of found a niche in the oil field sign business as time went on.
Yeah, we actually took out a name as Oilfield Signs in Texas because in East Texas, oil fields everywhere, and they need a lot of signs. So yeah, that's how it evolved.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, your dad was like a one-man band. How long did that go on? Like when did he hire his first employee?
It didn't take that long. He hired one, and when I remember, because he started the sign company before I was born, so as I'm getting old enough to remember things, there's always a couple people working there with him. Mm-hmm. Mainly some people in the office making the signs, and then he would be the main installer. Oh, well, he did it all.
Right.
But
he was doing the drawings, like making the signs, taking them to install, collecting on accounts payable.
He had
or accounts receivable, whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
And making accounts payable, probably.
The whole shebang. His taxes, he did it all. Yeah. He set up a little home office at our house, and he would do the layouts at night. And he would work for a little bit, and we'd eat, and he would play with us, and he'd read us a story, and then I'm pretty sure he'd go back in that office and keep working on what he was doing.
Until just whenever.
Yeah. Signs, seem pretty insignificant, but the people that need the signs need them when they need them. And so you don't get you don't have months to do anything. You have weeks or days.
Right.
And you just have to grit your teeth and get after it. And that's like a lot of business. You're asked to do a lot in a little amount of time. And if you can, that's how you succeed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were talking about that earlier, when we were at dinner, like every line of work that you're in these days requires you to be super responsive. Like, and I feel like, I haven't been a business owner myself for very long. And I was even kind of joking to you earlier that I don't even own a business. I own a job.
But, we all do.
But it's like, the demands on your time today and the responsiveness that people expect of you, I feel like it's increased over time. You've got to respond faster. You've got to be available quicker.
Well, this competition drives a lot of that too. Mm-hmm. You think in the sign business, like I said, everybody can be a sign person now by buying just some small gear on Amazon. You can buy this stuff to make signs for not a lot of money. Well, in the real estate world, you can sell your own house and you have online tools to do it. And so you got competition from your business peers, but then you have homeowners that are doing it themselves, and
you have competition from whole other business models.
Yeah. It's evolution, which is, it's cool to see, but what's important, and I'll tell you about a story of my stint at Best Buy. It's important to keep up with it, because if you don't, you get lost behind it and you don't catch back up.
Yeah, that's true. And you see that in a lot of industries over time. Standard Oil is a great example. Like that's like the number one example. They basically bet the entire farm on kerosene for heating oil. And when the automobile came around, John D. Rockefeller, for whatever reason, thought it was going to be just a fad. And so Standard Oil missed out on this opportunity to be like the owner of all petroleum products, because they bet everything on kerosene and, heating oil. And there's other examples of that throughout, business history, but, you do have to, Blockbuster, another classic example, right? Like, when's the last time you went to the freaking video store to pick out a DVD? You just get everything on your TV nowadays right at home.
Well, I just got a text message from my brother last night, and it was a news article and it said Redbox just filed for bankruptcy.
Oh, I knew that was coming.
Well, we all did, didn't we? But Redbox is actually a tenant of ours. We don't have a whole lot of commercial real estate, but we have. My dad built a building probably 15 years ago, and it's 3 suites. And Redbox, no one knew it. They didn't want to sign on the building. Was in the first suite, and they just used it as a warehouse. And the configuration was great. They pull a vehicle through the front door, load it up, and then go out the back door with all the supplies they need to restock their boxes. And they were our tenant, I guess, maybe 10 years. And we never raised the rent, which that was just probably should have. But then towards the end of it, we knew it was kind of bleak. Blocks of Buckster's already gone, so we didn't even try. We're going to ride this out. And I guess about this time last year, they called and said that was it. So we enjoyed the Redbox while they were there. But perfect example of that's a model that through evolution of technology is no longer viable. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? Instead of watching Netflix, should we be watching Redbox? Right. At some point, there was a decision to be made of what to pursue, and probably the wrong decision was made.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to what you and I have been talking about too. It's like, as a business owner, you've got to keep your finger on the pulse of like the economy as a whole and consumer behavior and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you and I have been just kind of talking for the last few weeks about how we kind of see the economy slowing down a little bit, even though we're not really hearing that in the news. I'm seeing it in my business. You're seeing it in your business because some of your business is connected to retail sales, which, I want to remember to ask you about the Best Buy thing, speaking of retail sales. But, and we'll talk, I guess we'll get into more of that in a minute because you guys have just to kind of fast forward a little bit to, talk about where y'all are today from where you came from. Like, y'all have the sign business. You've got a metal fabrication shop that employs 50 people now. And y'all have a tire and off-road shop.
Yep.
And you're about to open up a new business venture, and I'll let you spill the beans on that one. But you guys have taken this one little thing that your dad started 50 years ago. This year's y'all's 50th anniversary. I just realized that. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I hadn't even, honestly, bad on me. I hadn't even thought about it.
Right.
Yeah,
y'all should be celebrating that.
Yeah, that's great.
But 50 years ago, your dad started this one little thing, and you said just a minute ago that WPC started in 2009, which was 15 years. So 35 years in between your dad starting his little one-man show and y'all starting WPC, and then 15 years into that, because WPC started real small too. Mm-hmm. I'll let you I'll let you talk about that more in a minute too, because I'm sure people will be interested in hearing that. But to go into 50 freaking employees, plus that's not even counting the people that work for Royal or the sign shop. In total, your family is employing what, 80 people?
Yeah, approximately. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Which is wild.
Which to me, it's a tremendous amount of responsibility. Like the decisions I have to make, and we always try to make good ones, have very much impacts on 80 different families that work for us.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Not even just the employees either. It's like their wives, their kids.
Yeah. I don't. When I think of an employee, I don't just think about themselves. So I think of all the the wife and kids or a husband, whoever it is. Yeah, it's family entities that you want to provide good, reliable stress. We try to minimize stress. We try to build a good environment for people to come to work, and they want to come to work. Yeah. And that's what we want. There's a lot of responsibility there.
Yeah.
I try not to forget it because it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm sure that all business owners feel that responsibility, especially when we're talking about an economy like where we're at right now, where things are slowing down a little bit and people are looking at the balance sheet a little more carefully than they maybe were a couple of years ago. And they're maybe having to make some of those tough choices right now. Do we try to keep employees around? Do we find other ways to cut expenses? I mean, when you guys are looking at those kinds of challenges, what factors are you considering when you're making choices about how do we cut expenses, keep the business profitable, even when the economy's not working in our favor? Or have you ever gone through that?
We have, when WPC started, like I said, it was in the recession, like right when the recession hit is right when we opened the door.
Like 2008, 2009, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have our sign company on the north side of Highway 80. On the south side, I should say like across the street from each other.
Yeah.
So we have the sign shop, and then across the street was the first building for our metal company. It was so slow that we would, especially Sloan, would be at the sign shop, and he would look out the window as he's making his signs for a customer to pull into our metal shop across the street because we couldn't afford any employees, and it wasn't making money. And so he would see someone pull up, and he would run across the street and help that customer, which is great. And then he would run back across the street and start making signs. I mean, no one needed our services at that point, like the established powder coater. So in our metal business, when we first started, it was just water jet cutting, so cutting metal with water, and powder coating.
So to talk about that for a second, like that didn't just come out of nowhere. Like the metal shop part kind of came out of the sign shop part, right?
Yeah. So the sign shop, when you're in a general sign company or you have one, you're asked to make all kinds of signs, and whether it be the church or the school or whoever, a lot of them need to be fabricated out of metal. You think of just the pole and the base plates and all that. Well, we're having to call companies to cut these parts, and we had a welding machine in the sign shop, so we'd weld them up. And then when it was time to coat them, you could, stick some paint on it, or you could send it to a powder coating shop and get a better job done. We were always the low man on the totem pole at those companies because we didn't have much to bring them in business, so we'd have to wait our turn.
Right.
And it was slow and tedious.
Well, it goes back to that conversation we were having a while ago about, when somebody calls and wants something, they want it now.
Yeah, that's right. And you see what it did to us.
Yeah.
It spurred us getting into that business. So at the time, my dad had actually helped a friend start a magazine company in the sign business. And it was a sign trade. So this magazine would be sent out to all these sign companies, and they'd have trade shows too. So another thing, so my dad was making signs, but he was also writing magazine articles at night and traveling to these trade shows. Heck of a guy. I think as I get older, I'll reflect back more and appreciate more and more of it. But he could do it all. And through the magazine company that he helped start, just at that point in time, he didn't have a big share in it. So they made him, or his best friend made him an offer to buy shares, and he said, okay. And so that money helped, towards the purchase of equipment to get this metal company started. And so, that's how the company started. But
when did your dad buy part of this magazine company? Was this like long before WPC or like shortly before?
This was, I'm trying to condense this into a podcast, but I would say probably in the 80s. So him and his best friend, they met at Pine Tree High School, or actually probably middle school, local school. They were buddies. They worked for the Longview News Journal. His friend stayed more in the News Journal, so publication. My dad's in the sign company. His friend started a T-shirt printing company, so similar to signs. But since he had a publication interest, then he wrote a business. I mean, he wrote his first little magazine or mini book, whatever you want to call it. His friend did, that was how not to start a screen printing company because it whooped his butt, and he knew what not to do.
So screen printing is like making T-shirts and stuff.
T-shirts and mainly T-shirts in that shop.
Okay.
So he wrote this little thing of what not to do to start one of these companies, and then that turned into a magazine that was actually very successful, home-based in Denver, employed well over 50 people. I don't know how many people it was, and then ran trade shows nationally all over the country. So my dad, his contribution, actually, he helped loan the company a small amount of money to get it off the ground, and or contributed, I should say, and then was the main writer for that magazine up until just a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember hearing about his articles and stuff. It's called In the Trenches.
In the Trenches.
Yeah, it's kind of famous.
It's the trials and tribulations of the sign company. In fact, he wrote so many of them. They recently made a book of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which, my dad had recently passed away, and so it's been hard to open that book, but I appreciate that they did that because one day I'll dive into that and it'll be awesome.
It's like having his diaries.
It's great. Yeah, you can't, the diaries are, and there's stories about me and my brother and my sister, and, it'll be a trip down memory lane. It'll be great.
For sure.
But,
so yeah, you guys have, this big operation, and for a time in 2009, your brother was running across the street.
So we started that, just to going back, we're running across the street to help customers because we didn't have any employees. The reason being, the established, like, for example, the powder coating company that was down on the other side of town that has been established and, was a viable business. They went bankrupt. They went out of business. He said, I lost 70% of my customers overnight. And so you have these established companies doing different things in the metal world, and they're gone or they're struggling. And so you have us as these new kids on the block.
So what's it like when you are starting up this fledgling little business and you've pushed all your chips into the center of the table pretty much?
Yeah.
What's that like? Like when you see other businesses going down and you're like, oh my God.
It's pretty scary. I was probably 20. Yeah, around 20. So you're a little naive back then, and so you don't really think about the consequences. But
and you were still in college, like you weren't even here, right?
I was here, and we got so the recession hit, and my mom got cancer too.
Yeah.
So I came back to help start the business and take care of her, and then she got better, and the business picked up, and then I went back to college, finished, and came back.
Okay.
So here, and back. But I guess the silver lining is, and this is what my dad felt, was that, we didn't have much customers. We didn't have a whole lot to do, but we didn't know what we were doing. You get a couple people. We went to a training class for a week, but you're talking about jumping into a whole industry and a whole company that you're not that familiar with. Mm-hmm. It's better to have fewer customers than too many. Because there's learning mistakes that have to be made, and it's better to do that on a smaller scale than on a bigger scale. So,
that's a good insight because, when you first start out in a business, I remember starting out in the real estate business, and thinking to myself like, man, I want to have all these customers. I want to have, I had this vision of what I wanted, and it's funny how God gives you exactly what you need,
Yeah.
My first year in the real estate business, I did 4 deals, and like you, I didn't need to help 4 people a month. I wasn't ready for that. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what I was doing. And so, that's a really wise, insight. Learning a business, you don't need that much business. And, it probably is a good thing that you got to fail on a little bit smaller scale, because today you're building stuff for Komatsu and which is Komatsu is a big heavy equipment company, and Capacity Trucks, which is they what is it? They have trailer jockeys for warehouses.
Mini semi that is just on a warehouse.
So you're cutting these thousands of parts every day, sending them out, or maybe not thousands a day, but dozens and dozens of parts every day. You're sending them to these big companies that are Komatsu for sure is probably a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And,
absolutely.
And you guys are, a key part of their business.
That's the whole journey. It's been interesting. And you don't really ever make yourself have time to reflect on it until you're sitting in a podcast and you kind of start thinking of things you haven't thought about in a while. And it's been a fun adventure. It's been great. That first year, just the equipment alone is $500,000 to start the company.
One water jet table.
$250,000. Yeah. And we did not have cash for that. The sign company, you're talking about a 3-man shop, so it didn't have the resources to just go all in and just buy all the stuff in cash. Mm-hmm. There's one of probably the biggest thing my dad did was just build a good name for himself. Mm-hmm. And so when he asked the bank for a loan to start this business or buy this equipment, they said, okay. He had a good reputation. He wasn't going to default. God willing, he wouldn't have done it on purpose.
Right.
But he had a good reputation, and so we had those opportunities from his good name. that first year, let's say $500,000 in equipment it took to do business, we did $50,000 in sales.
Yeah,
And
that's not even paying like the light bill or nothing.
No,
Notes.
no, we had
Did you even break even?
no, absolutely not. My dad had just built a house. And we grew up in a very modest house that he actually built by hand, and he did most of it all himself.
Which is literally across the street from where we're sitting.
Yeah,
right now.
he did the framing. He did. I think he did everything except for electrical, and my grandpa did that. And then, so that's where we grew up. And then he just built when we were starting that business, he had just built our new house. It's a great house. And he sold the old house to finance the new one. Well, that's when all the crap hit the fan. And so that the small house that was supposed to go to the big house or bigger house then got sucked up by WPC, our metal company, and it evaporated, but it was every bit of what it took to keep that business going. Mm-hmm. So if I was to like talking on how to start a business and what to account for, I think what he had noticed is that a lot of people, especially when you're going to get in this industry, so you go to some school or class or seminar of, how to do it. When they tell you it's going to cost this much to get into this business, he would say triple it, because their estimates of what it takes to start a business and make it into something that's viable are going to be wrong. Mm. And so I think he probably felt prepared with what we had, but then the reality set in, and then it took these life savings that was, invested into that house we grew up in. It took all of it just to keep it afloat. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that was it. I mean, the water's at the edge of the ship, and we're about to sink, but we pulled through. And then the next year, we had some more customers walk through the door. You hired a person.
Now, at that time, the metal shop was cutting signs for the sign business. But you guys were also doing some powder coating.
Yep.
Right? And so y'all were doing like wheels and lift kits and like talk about, because the sign business or the metal business at that time was a heck of a lot different than what it is today.
Yeah. So, with powder coating, that was before powder coating wheels was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it just started where like,
y'all were like on the bleeding edge.
Who would have want black wheels?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden black wheels became popular.
Yeah. Now you see like the bronze ones rolling around.
Yeah.
Purple. I saw a dude with a big Royal sticker riding around with purple wheels and a purple lift kit.
Yeah. Well, thing. You think back, I mean, in the 2000s, how many people had different colored wheels?
Oh, yeah.
It was either chrome or aluminum. And so
it wasn't a thing.
It was interesting. Yeah. That all of a sudden, more and more automotive customers were walking in to get different things powder coated. Yeah. And then on the cutting side of water jet, it's like the Swiss Army knife of cutting, Army knife. So like if you need granite cut or you need glass cut, you need metal cut, anything, it'll cut it. It's a great tool, and that's what we started off with. So we could cut your metal parts or whatever, and then we could powder coat them.
Right.
And that evolved.
How did that evolution take place? Like, how did you go from taking people off the street, just random people walking through the door and saying, "Oh, I bought a new truck. I want my wheels powder coated." You went from that to working for one of the largest heavy equipment manufacturers on the planet. How did that happen?
Man, if I could just sum it up, is if you can be the problem solver to someone's problem, mm-hmm. that's where you find your opportunities. Mm-hmm. And someone else had said to me back in the day, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be better than the people around you. So
that's true.
If you could be better.
It's like running from a bear. You don't have to be the fastest person. You just got to be faster than the slowest person.
That's right. and I actually found a little relief in that, because when you're trying to start a business, you want it to be perfect. But, I mean, perfection is not achievable. No. It's something to reach towards, but you're not going to get to perfection. So, yeah.
So, but I mean, how did like
with Komatsu specifically?
How did that happen? Like, what chain of events led up to that?
Man, with Komatsu, and if you don't know Komatsu, they're like John Deere. They're just a big heavy machinery manufacturer. And luckily for us,
and they have a big factory here in Long.
Yeah, so Laterno is a very old company and has been blessed, or Longview's been blessed by it for a long time.
R.G. Letourneau was a genius.
Yeah, he made all kinds of stuff. He made the world's largest earth movers, and he made offshore drilling rigs.
And he was an aviation enthusiast.
But even better.
Even better.
So all that took place in Longview. And, it has switched names a few times. It was Letourneau, then Joy Global. And when it was called Joy Global, that's when a guy that I didn't know him, he didn't know me. He was one of the buyers there and said, hey, we're having a hard time finding these metal parts, a manufacturer to make them for us. What do you got? And he walked through our shop, and it was, we try to keep it nice. Mm-hmm. It's 5,000, 6,000 square foot, small shop. And he walked through there, and I showed him what we had to offer. We actually, at that point, we just added on another building and brought in a press brake so we could cut metal, and now we could bend metal.
So about what year was this?
This was probably 2014. So
it was like 5 years into being...
It's actually probably a little later than that. Maybe it was 2015, 2016, something like that.
Okay, so y'all been in business about 5 or 6 years, surviving on consumer powder-coated wheels and things like that.
Yeah.
So this guy approaches you.
And, it wasn't like all of a sudden, here's this mountain of work. You save the day. He was like, can you quote this part for me? Yeah, I quoted it. And he's like, okay, can you make it? Yeah, I made it. And so...
What was it, like a dozen...
Yeah, I mean...
Kniffling pins or Canator valves or whatever? I mean...
Yeah, just think of, any kind of bracket, something to hold a fire extinguisher or a step for a platform or whatever it was.
Right.
And, you do a good job and you get another opportunity. So we got another opportunity to do another part. And I think we have 4,000 unique parts that we manufacture for them.
God.
It was a lot. And we may be, I think we might be the largest supplier of theirs on a part level. Okay. Because, they probably buy a lot of like Cummins engines and stuff like that. So not dollar amount, but just volume of variety of parts.
Yeah.
We probably provide the most or near it. So
now, is that just for the one here in Longview, or do y'all ship them out to other?
There's other Komatsus across the world, and we don't really supply a lot to them. The thing with the metal business is logistics and being able to react. And so if you put 1,000 miles between you and your customer, the weight becomes expensive to ship. And then if they have a fire they need put out, well, you're not where you can make that part to save the day because, there's 1,000 miles that has to travel. So there's big pushes, which is actually a good thing for us to bring the large manufacturers close to the smaller manufacturers. Like Komatsu would prefer that their vendors would be in the same town as them.
I see. So, how do they do that? Like they're looking for a place to go. Do they just like?
I don't know. See, there's masterminds of marketing out there, and that is not something that I could tout. We've never had a salesman. I built the website, which is okay. It hasn't been great. Our biggest thing is, just focus on the good work. If you do good work, success will follow. And so we've always focused on the good work, and our success has followed that.
Yeah.
And plus for us, being that there wasn't a cash cow behind us, we have to grow at a reasonable pace. We only, every time we make an investment, you kind of stick yourself out there you get your head chopped off if the economy crash. So it's like an inchworm. You buy a little more and you grow toward it, and you buy a little more and you grow towards it.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend last night, and we were talking about like music gear. And he's like, "Man, I sold this house, and like I went and I had some extra cash to spend." He's like, "I bought like every piece of music gear that I'd ever wanted, and just had all this stuff: keyboards, pedals for my guitars, drums, electronic, whatever." And he was like, "I ended up selling most of it because I didn't know how to use any of it because I got too much stuff at once." And he was like, "I think if I had to do over again, I'd probably go and like buy this one little piece of gear here and this one little piece of gear there, like we had to do when we were younger. Like a lot of people today, like we're in our mid-30s. Like if there's something we kind of want, it's like okay, we can kind of make it happen. And when you start off a business with a whole wad of cash and you've got all this capital to buy all this equipment and you just fire it up immediately, it does stand to reason that you're gonna have a lot more growing pains because you're trying to do all of this in such a short period of time. You're trying to learn how to use a water jet, how to use a press brake, how to use, I don't know what else y'all have, but like all these different tools all at the same time versus, like you were saying, mastering one tool before implementing the next tool.
Well, in managing risk,
Yeah.
because, if you have a loan for this machine and it slows down, but you have the rest of the machines, filling up the slack, you're okay. But if everything is leveraged and the economy takes a dip, sometimes you don't recover. So, yeah, I mean, we could probably be 3 or 4 times the size right now if we just went in debt heavy. But that it's all hindsight. You look at the last 10 years, it's been good for manufacturing, but I mean, you're just one economic decision away from something fatal that happens to you. So,
yeah,
if you're trying to build a company that is resilient and that is your plan is to have it for the long run, you got to make smart decisions, and you don't stick your neck out there super far.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to stay in business. I mean, that's the whole thing. There's always risk involved, risk for reward. But
yeah, it's nothing venture, nothing gain.
Yeah, that's right. But you just have to be reasonable and try to make good decisions at that, because it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of that, like, we're talking a little bit about having like a whole bunch of employees and stuff. You guys started out with basically you, your brother, and your dad.
Yeah.
And today y'all have 80 people on the payroll.
Yeah.
What's it like growing a business from 3 family members to 80 different people? What are the challenges that you see along the way? What are some growing pains that you guys have experienced in that kind of growth over a relatively short period of time?
And it's been fun. Since my recollection of this all starts at the beginning. Like, I remember the first person, the second person, third person, and everyone's unique. The cool thing, like we were talking about Komatsu, which was Laterno. Laterno has a university in Longview. And so there's a lot of engineering students that come out of that university. And so we've hired them as interns, and we've hired them as full-time employees now. But at the beginning, we had interns that would work part-time for us. And so just meeting these young people that are real ambitious and giving them opportunities. I mean, there's one that is successful working at Exxon, but in Africa, because his family were missionaries and he wanted to go back to Africa, and Exxon had a position for him. And
so he worked for you guys for a little while.
While he was in school.
Yeah.
And while he was working for us, back then, small shop, he's running the water jet, and he's going to the front to talk to the customer and make a drawing. And when the part's done, he loads it up with a forklift into the customer's vehicle. He goes make the invoice for him. So you get the life cycle of business in college, which, if you work for a big company, you're going to do one part of that cycle. Mm-hmm. But for a small shop, it's neat to see from conception to finish what you have to do a transaction.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned that because he later told me, he's like, man, that experience was so important to me. It helped me so much. Thank you. And
because you go to work for a bigger company, and because you've had that little bit of experience, like doing every part of the transaction, you understand better what other people's jobs look like, and you know how that you can better support them while you're doing your job.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think you feel, or you understand how important that all these pieces are to the whole. Mm-hmm. You don't just get focused on the one.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
when you guys started hiring on people and you started growing the business, what challenges did you guys encounter along the way? I mean, like, you got more people coming on board, you got more, smaller compartmentalization of jobs. What's it like managing that and growing a company from 3 people to 60?
It wasn't easy, and obviously most things in business aren't easy.
No.
But again, going back to focusing on just doing a good job. Like I said, we didn't have salesmen advocating for us, so it's really just our good work speaking for itself.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, I think so. I probably take it for granted, but that's a big deal.
It is.
And
companies that spend a large sums of money trying to convince people to buy their products, and y'all aren't doing that. Like, you're just word of mouth.
Yeah,
You
just
know?
do good work.
Yeah.
And, the growth was manageable. And so, just one machine led to another. So like I said, we had a water jet, and then we had a plasma cutter, so different technology to cut with. But that opened the doors for different style of parts or different thicknesses of parts that people needed. And then, expanded our powder coating. And so every time you make an expansion, that's usually hiring one or two people to associate with it. Built another building.
And so, like, today, I mean, you guys have, somebody working the front desk, greeting people when they come in the door. You've got somebody that's working the accounting department, and I think there's like a couple of people in the accounting department for y'all's enterprises.
The last time so we have a few different locations. So I was in that one. I think there's at least 4 or 5 people associated with accounting.
Yeah.
Man, it's so cool. I don't ever think about this on a normal day. You get in the truck, go to the shop, and get your job done. But when you have time to reflect on it, it actually is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that is like why I wanted to do this, is because I think it's so cool. And part of the inspiration for doing this was watching the way your business has grown over the last 10, 12 years that I've known you. I've always been super impressed by it, man, and just, admired the way you guys have done all that. And, y'all still are, close as a family. I've been to your Christmas parties, like, y'all's employees love you guys, and it's really cool. We haven't even talked about the other 2 businesses that you guys kind of have going on. So you've got the sign business that your dad started as a one-man show. Now you've got the metal business, and so doing all this powder coating and making these metal parts kind of led you guys to getting into another business.
Yeah, so it's funny how that works. So in a lot of this, there's a dreamer behind the scenes, and I'm not that person. Our brother is.
Yeah.
He's the dreamer of the family. And so with WPC, the metal company, that was not my envision. And in fact, if he had not envisioned that, I'd probably be working stage production. I always like live entertainment, and Ronnie and I, we were in a band together for a while, and I really enjoyed that. But God has a plan, and
wouldn't it be fun though to go back, like, knowing what we know now about business, and trying it again?
Yeah, we probably have a successful band.
You probably did pretty good.
Well, he dreamt of this company, and because there was a need, Sloan did. Yeah. We couldn't find companies to help us with these metal products for our sign company, so we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then going back, I think we talked about like motivation and drive, and I told you I was probably a little naive being 20. One thing I never forgot is, like, if I fail, my parents will lose their house. They'll lose everything they worked for. And my dad, signed his name to this company and turned his 2 boys loose on it. And he's not working there. He's working at the sign shop. He didn't come over there with us. So he went $500,000 in debt or more and put his 2 young sons in charge.
And Sloan's just said, 3 years older than you?
He's 6 years older than me.
6? I didn't realize he was that much. Okay.
He said,
So he's 26 and you're 20.
Yeah.
And your dad's like, okay, guys, here's a plasma cutter and an oven for powder coating.
And he's there for support anytime we needed anything. Dad, what do you think we should do? And, he added value for sure and opportunity, but when it came down to a normal day, normal transaction, it was our responsibility. So it's make or break. And I don't know how many people get in a situation where if they do a bad job, their parents will lose their home.
Yeah.
But that's impactful.
Well, and that goes back to that. Have you ever read the book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek?
No, I haven't.
You should. So basically the premise of the book is, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters why you're doing what you're doing. And your why at that time was, my parents laid this money out, $500,000. like if I don't do a good job, the consequences are really dire.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was more of a like back against the wall approach, I guess, kind of in a way.
It was motivation for sure.
Yeah. So has your why changed any as time has gone on?
It's not the why. It's the amount of people that would be impacted has changed. Because before it was my mom, but now it's my family, and it's Sloan's family, and every other family that works for us. So now the why, it's just amplified. But I mean, that's going to do that when you amplify a business.
Yeah.
So does that.
Yeah. So you guys, you have the metal shop, and you're doing the powder coating and stuff. And
that would caveat led up to this. We're doing a lot of automotive powder coating.
And Sloan had yet another idea.
It had another idea.
Yeah.
He said, you know what? We do a lot of powder coating for wheels in, automotive purposes. And at the time, if you needed your wheels powder coated, we'd say, great, we'd be happy to help you. I need you to go down to Tidwell Tire, have them dismounted, bring them back to me. I'll powder coat them for you. When I'm done, I'll call you. You pick them back up, take it back down to the tire company. They'll mount it for you. You'll be good to go. And we did thousands of those transactions, but it was a pain in the butt for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, really more for the customer. And so we see a need. And, at the time we knew a guy that was fantastic at selling tires and partnered up with them. Because we didn't really, we weren't going to try to start all over like WPC. We felt the value bringing someone in that knew what they were doing more than us in that industry. And so we started that company, and it grew fast. It was actually very impressive too. And I think there's probably, I would say about 15 people that work at that company, and it's great. We're at, with wheels and tires, it's pretty straightforward. You know what you're doing and the objective. We're now at a stage where it's more refinement. Like, how are we going to be the best? What are we going to do to be different? Because there's tire shops all over the place.
Yeah.
And they compete everywhere. So how do you compete? And so
tires are like a commodity.
It is.
Yeah, it's like people are just going to shop for the cheapest of the cheap.
Yeah.
So
now if price is the driving force, how do you counter that? Well, your service has to be kick butt.
Yeah.
Your product has to be kick butt.
Well, the facility too.
The facility, yeah. I mean, it all adds up. If I could remember it off the top of my head, I thought of this equation. It's how fast can you do it? The quality of the work. So those are two things. The customer service to back it up, and the price. So you need a great price, great customer service, quality, and the speed of which you can do it.
It's hard to deliver.
If you deliver all four, this is my four, and I think it's almost universal for business. You're killing it. You're doing great.
That's good. So how fast
can you do it? How good can you do it?
Good price.
Good price.
Good service.
And good service. If you can hit all four of those.
See, that's like against the traditional wisdom of, good, fast, cheap, pick two of the three.
Well, yeah. I guess maybe that's for the customer standpoint. But if you're trying to compete and really do a great job, if you hit all four, you're fantastic.
What companies do you look at as an example of like how you want to do business?
Well, I would back up. So when you're in a small business, it's very hard to hit all four because, and a lot of time it's the price one because you have these large
economy of scale.
Yeah, that's right. You have people and companies have been in it a lot longer than you. They're a lot bigger than you, and because of that, they buy things at a better price. So it's hard to compete with that. If you can't compete there, but you're kicking butt on all the other three, you're still doing good.
That's right. It can kind of balance itself out a little bit.
The holy grail of this is to achieve all four and manage that and keep it. And when you're there, it's a great ride. Now, I
Have
can't...
you achieved it yet?
It's the price thing. We're a lot closer to it because we're getting to a size where economies are picking up a scale. But it's tough. I mean, there's established metal companies. If we're talking just about, so the metal company we have, WPC is our biggest company. If we're just talking about that, there's a lot of big metal companies across the country. And they've been around, some of them have been around since like 1900. They've been doing this a long time. So it takes a lot of momentum to get there. But We're pretty close. We're buying steel at prices better than we've ever bought because now we're buying truckloads where before we were buying pieces. So, yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But it seems like that if you're talking about metal or signs or tires, those 4 things I feel like travel between all of them. If you can do those 4 things, you do great.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually going to remember that. I'm going to try to remember to write that down later. I can just go back and listen to this podcast. Probably be the only one that listens to it.
Well, like with the tire shop, you have Discount Tire.
Yeah.
And those folks, they can buy tires so much cheaper than us. And it's hard to compete.
Walmart.
And you got, everybody goes online to look at their prices before they make a decision. So, customer service is going to be excellent. Excellent. Because especially in the tire business, there's so many other tire companies to go see. You have one opportunity to make a difference with that person in a positive way.
Right.
Or one opportunity to make a negative impact on them. Now, if you do it positive, they're going to come back. You provide them a bad experience of the first time, that's probably the last time they're going to be there.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot.
No, it doesn't.
Like, they wait too long to be greeted by somebody, and they're like, "Yep, I'm out."
Yeah, that's it.
And when you're a small operation, like you were saying, your brother running across the street, like somebody walks in, wanting to do business with you guys, and there's no one there to greet them. Like they're gonna leave.
Yeah.
And that can be tough. Like, and we're kind of laughing about it, but that's a real challenge that businesses face. Is being able to be responsive to the needs of their customers and address their concerns in a timely manner. And so, you guys have a hard time competing on price because you are a little bit smaller operation, but you're competing on speed, you're competing on service, and you're competing on quality.
Yeah.
So what steps do you guys take to make yourselves competitive on speed, quality, and service? What do you focus on?
Let's see. With speed, I guess it's a little unique to each company, but in essence, like how fast can you literally do something without, if you're not trying to work people day and night, if they're working a normal shift, how fast can something get through the shop? That's when you really start, what you need to do, and that's the refinement. How do we order stuff? How do we order material and make sure it gets here on time? Or how are we storing that material so that we know where it is and it gets to the machine on time? So
it's like organizing the space where people can find what they need when they need it.
Yeah, but you look at it across the board. I mean, if let's say a dozen different things have to take place to make this part from start to finish, then it's how does that information travel from step to step, and how are those people handling those different steps in the middle? You can it's easy to do a good job. Like, I did a good job. It's hard to do great because all those pieces have to be so refined where they click together like perfect little Legos.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. And
so there was a time where, you and your brother and, the Laterno kids that were working for you, y'all were doing everything.
Yeah.
How do you transition the responsibility of doing everything to delegating is a big thing that small business owners struggle with. And we talked about this earlier. Like, there's so many businesses that die because the owner just can't delegate. They can't let go of the responsibility. They don't trust someone else to do the job, or they're afraid of bringing someone in and offering them to pay them to do the job. But then business takes a turn. They can't pay them. And then they have to say, look, I can't pay you. I've got to let you go. So there's a lot of things that contribute to someone's, reluctance to delegate. How do you overcome that and scale your business when there's all those challenges in the way?
What I've said and what I've come to know is that you have to, on a normal day, be the least important person to become the most important person. So on a normal day and a normal transaction, you have to be the least important person. Like, you let this person do this, and this, and this. As the owner. But that's where you find where you can be great is now that you step away from the normal process, now you get to oversee how these pieces go together and how can we make this better. It's that oversight. So you have to give up responsibilities to do, the basics of the job so that you have the time to analyze and build the structure for that growth.
So when the time came for you guys to do that, like to hire your first person, what, if you can remember back to that, like what did you bring them in for, and what was the process like to train them and get them ready to do their job?
Back then in small business, it's, hey, I just need some help. I have too much work to do. Can you go grind this part?
Yeah.
Or,
so you just had a gopher.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm in a bind. I need some help. So, a lot of hiring decisions are made with much strategy at the beginning. It's like, I need some help. And then you hire somebody. When it gets bigger, then that's when you start really building an organizational chart.
Yeah.
And you say, all right, this is how business needs to flow, and these are the people and where they need to be in the different locations to make sure that happens. Then it becomes more strategic because, when you have a bigger company, now you're hiring buyers, and you have shipping and receiving departments, and then operators and supervisors, different managers. That's when it takes a lot more refinement.
Have you found that, like, was there a point where you felt like your business took on a life of its own?
Oh yeah, I think I realized that maybe my last vacation. A goal for me and maybe some other, hopefully most business owners is you're trying to make. I mean, if you think of it as a person, you've created this entity. You want to make sure it lives, and it doesn't need to be dependent on you. Like if I die in a car wreck, do I want this company that I've worked a long time to help build, and all the people that work for it and are, blessed by it, do you want it to fail because you're no longer here anymore?
Yeah.
No, heck no.
Well, that's what I was talking about a while ago, like, the difference in owning a business and owning a job.
Yeah.
There's so many small business owners that all they own is a job.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've got a business and they've got customers and they've got things like that, but like they are the person. And if something happens to them, if they get, injured or sick or pass away or just go on vacation.
Well, something will happen.
Their business will suffer.
Well, exactly. But we all have an imminent demise coming. At some point, you're not going to be here anymore.
Yeah.
You can count on it. It doesn't matter if you're 80 or 30 or 50. I mean, there's a time of coming. So if you understand that and you have this company and the times are coming, you want to make it, if you can, where that's going to be unfortunate, but your company survives so that it still continues to benefit the people that work in the organization.
Man, that's got to be such a cool feeling where like you've got, this thing that you and your family started from scratch, and you're just like, and you're looking on it right now, and kind of like you say, like you don't really take the time to think about this stuff because you're in it every day. You're showing up and you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
The thing though is that like your job has changed over time. Like you've gone from being the water jet operator / CAD designer / accounts receivable / salesman / whatever to being, one of the leaders of this company. And so, now you're looking at everything from this 30,000 foot view, but all the while, like you're on this journey from going from do it all to, I'm the person who's, charting the course of this company. But you don't realize it, as you're going through it. Like you don't realize it that, man, I haven't actually operated a water jet in 4 years, which is probably not true, but
not that long, but I definitely don't run the machines on any kind of production level. And what's interesting, like today, I have a project, and it's more of a personal project. So I was letting the shop run down for the day, and then I was going to start welding this thing up. I was making dining room table for my wife.
Yeah, there you go.
So we have a wooden top. I was telling you about the story, and I think we got interrupted in the car. This wooden top for this table, we had all this wood sitting in the barn behind my mom's house, and it was wood that when I was a kid, we brought in a mobile sawmill, and my dad, my brother, myself, and my granddad all processed this wood. And it went in a barn. It's been there for 20 years or however long it was. Well, that wood's been sitting there, and my dad's no longer here. My granddad's no longer here. And we're looking at, like, buying a new dining room table. And I'm like, you know what? I can make anything out of metal. And it just so happened this guy needed a building to do some woodworking in. And so I made him a deal. Said, can you, in fact, maybe I should elaborate a little more on this, because Zach is a good guy, and he's in our community. He started to come get Iron by Iron. You should interview him. He took this little furniture company that was mainly custom wood with some metal mixed in, and built it into an impressive company. And he just needed a little extra space for some unforeseen circumstances. And I said, look, here's the space. How about you just make me a top? I won't even charge you rent. So he made me this wooden top with this wood that came from me and my dad, brother, and granddad on that day back long ago. So he made the top for me, and I've been just too busy to make the base that will hold this. So that's what I was working on at the end of the day. And I tell you, jumping at the machine to program it and bend the parts and weld it, I was so happy. Like there was a level of excitement that, if you buy a new vehicle, like, you feel excited, and like that was a cool experience. This times 10. Like I really enjoyed making this metal platform, because on a normal day, I don't do it. I've got a lot of talented, great people working for our shop. And so I don't get to jump in, but man, it feels good when you do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like getting back to your roots. So
yeah, feel good.
So kind of on that note, like what does your normal day kind of look like?
Oh man, that's there's not normal.
I think that's true for every business. There's no such thing as normal, but maybe a typical day is the better word.
Well, I would say most days, like there's an agenda, like there's things that need to be done, and there's still some, like Komatsu. I haven't, we're not a full blown like giant corporation. We're in the middle of this refinement. So although I don't run a machine every day, I will run a machine if I need to. And like on the quoting side, there's parts that I still quote. That I'm doing less of, but I might,
because you have someone whose job it is to quote parts.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and those are recent changes, right?
Yeah, in the last several years we went through really explosive growth, and so there's divvying out those responsibilities is what we're in the middle of, but also building it in a way that makes sense for our business model. So that being said, I still do some of those tasks. So I have the basics of business that I still need to tend to, but then a lot of it's just problem solving. I'll get a call that, this air compressor is down, and what processes do we need to do? Because an air compressor is like a heart in a metal manufacturing company.
Yeah,
you ain't gonna live without a heart.
Yeah,
and you ain't gonna live without an air compressor. So it's like life and death at that point. What's the best way to get this thing up and going? Or there's a situation with a customer and we need to do this to satisfy their needs. It's problem solving. And that's the biggest thing. I always felt like I enjoyed problem solving the most.
Yeah.
And not just in business. I like solving a problem. I like the gratification of solving the problem. I like the challenge of solving it in the moment.
Yeah.
Like if I was an astronaut on Apollo 13, I would probably have been scared for my life, but very excited to build this air purifier out of these random parts, because that would have been awesome. But in business, it's all about solving the problem. I mean, that's from day one. Your problem is, all right, I needed some customers. I need to solve their problems now. But it's all about problem solving, and it just all compounds.
It's kind of like we were talking about earlier. Like a golf game. You start out playing golf. And all you really want to do is go out there and just generally not suck and like have fun. And then you get into it a little bit. You're like, okay, I want to break 100. And then like you kind of hone your skills to the point where you can break 100. And then it's like, okay, I want to go out and shoot 90s. And it's like, okay, well I'm getting out to the range. I'm working on my putting. I'm working on my chipping. it's the same thing in business, or really any challenging skill that you're trying to learn. You're solving a new problem every day, and I don't think it ever goes away. I think you're always solving problems, even if you're Jeff Bezos, for Amazon. You're just solving bigger problems for, for more money, really. And
man,
and it's like the bigger the problem you can solve, the more money you can make.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's a genius in his own right because, well, he saw opportunities and then he found out how to solve, or that's not necessarily a problem, but
well, he did solve a problem. I mean, he solved a problem of bringing products, an unimaginable amount of choices and products
that's
to
true.
clients in a really timely fashion.
That's an American problem.
Dude. So like first world problems all the way.
Yeah, he solved that first world problem.
But we kind of went on a tangent there, but like you're talking about like your typical day, and it's like basically your job in your organization is the job of the fixer. Yeah. Like if something breaks, your job is to fix that broken equipment or machine or
not
whatever.
Necessarily fix it, but make the correct course to get it resolved.
Right.
Or make the right decision to get that situation taken care of.
Right.
I will turn a wrench if I need to.
Oh yeah.
I like that too. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, but the better thing to do is to find the right person or the right company, schedule what needs to be done. It's the coordination. Mm-hmm.
So another thing we were kind of talking about earlier that I think is valuable to talk about on something like this, you manage a pretty large family of businesses at this point, but one in particular is the WPC. That's your kind of your biggest thing you've got going. How do you balance being a business owner and also having a family and being there for your family? Because that's something a lot of business owners struggle with too. They work too much.
Yeah. I told you a little about my dad, and he had a lot of things to be proud of. One thing that I think he had told me this, it's not I think, he said, I wish I wouldn't have worked as much. And, his efforts, he felt like took away from family time, but he should have no regrets with that because it's allowed these opportunities to take place. If his hard work wasn't put in, we wouldn't have had the platform to do any of this. So I appreciate it. But that's the life for everybody, or the problem for everybody, because even if you're just an employee somewhere, it's managing that time with your family. The biggest thing is just appreciating them and realizing that time is just a glimpse. I mean, your life is so short. Maybe at some points it feels like it's dragging out, but all this is to be appreciated. All these different seasons, I call them, where kids are small or the business is this size or whatever. Just appreciate that day for what it is.
Yeah, and like you probably look back on those early days of WPC, and you think about how simple it was, and you probably miss it a little bit sometimes. Like you were saying, like getting on a machine and just like feeling that excitement, like working the weld machine, working the plasma cutter, like building your table base, it probably takes you back to like that little bit simpler time.
Yeah.
But
it's just, you need to be intentional.
Yeah.
Like you need to have the situational awareness of, all right, how much am I investing into this business and how much am I investing into my family? Obviously family's most important. But business is what supports the family. So it needs a lot of attention too.
The business, in a way, is kind of part of the family.
Yeah, and what I try to do is, if I need to do something that is going to make me work into the night, I at least try to eat dinner with the family and put the kids to bed, and then get back to it. Which it's a struggle to build a company to a certain size, but there's the benefits of doing that or achieving some of those milestones is a lot of those late nights start to dissolve because you have talented people in the right places.
You don't do that kind of stuff as much as you used to.
No. But also, talking about appreciating the moment, like a couple months ago, I was operating a water jet till 2 a.m, cutting up a part for a space company. And I thought that was awesome. I mean,
it was a space company?
Yeah. So this company who makes, they're I guess a national defense company. They do satellite stuff and all kinds of interesting things. But there's this big metal part that was cast. So they poured hot metal into a mold and made this part. Well, it was the first of what will be a lot, and they wanted me to chop it up into pieces so they could analyze the side profiles so they could see inside the casting. And it was such a weird job that
For like quality control? Or
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Check the integrity of the casting. And it's such an odd part, and it was 3-dimensional, which on a water jet you're typically cutting flat metal.
Right,
This was 8 inches tall of aluminum with all these dips and curves. Instead of working with Chevy, our water jet operator, on that product or on this project, I just let him go home, and I started. Man, we started early in the morning. I didn't get done until probably 2 a.m. But it was fun.
Yeah.
Now, it goes back to what's important, and I mean, I did not take much away from my family in that instance, because that's not every night.
Right.
But being able to jump on and handle those odd jobs, it's personally fulfilling, and you help the customer, and it's a good day. But it's all about balance. Everyone knows that, but you really have to be aware of all these dynamics to balance it out.
For sure. Do you how do you manage your time? Like, do you use a calendar? Do you use reminders in your phone? Do you just keep it all in your head?
A little bit of all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't found, maybe there's a tool out there that can manage all that without any problems, but
hey, if this podcast takes off, I'm pretty sure I'm going to want some sponsors. So maybe there's a company out there that
hey, come on with it.
Maybe Asana or something will sponsor this podcast and help you manage your time.
Yeah. Hey, that sounds good to me. There's so many things to figure out in a business. Like I mentioned, refinement. You have a business, it's working. Now, how do you make it better? That's what I call refinement.
Yeah.
Well, so finding that maybe that management tool is one thing of about 100 different things I need to find and establish.
That's another question too. Like, how do you prioritize tasks? Like, how do you decide what to focus on? Because there's really an infinite number of things that you could do with your day. How do you decide what's most important?
I think a lot of it's driven by who needs it first. So if there's a customer that needs this part now, they're going to receive that priority. Or if we're building a new building and the construction loan expires on this date, and all this concrete has to be in place, it still has to be erected, the finish out has to be done. There's a deadline for that. And so I guess all deadlines. So we try to organize the deadlines by importance and then attack them.
So do y'all have like strategy meetings to decide all that stuff, or do you kind of make those decisions yourself? Or
well, we have we put in pretty good software that gives us a snapshot of what's important, and say it's all important, but what's
now, is this
more
software that you guys had designed for y'all, or is it a?
Yeah, it's actually software that it's commercially available, but it's like bare bones. It's almost like Excel on steroids.
Okay.
And so we built this out, and we've invested a lot into it. And in fact, that might actually open another company for us, because we feel like we can make a good management software. And so that might be coming in the future. But
there you go.
Anyway, what we built so far, it does a pretty good job of managing and showing what needs to be done in the right order.
That's pretty cool. So you guys have this whole new business venture that you're starting out on.
Yeah. Well, so I'll be happy to dive into that. But let's take a little break. I'm going to grab another Coke, and then since this is the first podcast, which I'm excited about, let's make sure the audio and everything's good. So we'll take a quick break and come right back to it.
Sounds good. And we're back. So,
howdy.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys have like this whole new business venture that you're going to be starting up pretty quick.
Yeah, that's right.
My
brother, the dreamer. We're on to another one.
By the way, it's so cool, just to take a little tangent there for a second. Like, one thing I've always admired about you and Sloan is how y'all complement each other's strengths and abilities. And, honestly, I should probably have both of you here on this podcast, but the truth is I only have enough money for 2 mics. So, but, he's kind of the visionary and you're kind of the guy that makes it all happen.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, Sloan has a big part in making it happen. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we balance each other out because, I wouldn't have really got into any of these businesses without his dreaming of this entity, or I don't know. It's just we complement each other well in that fact.
Yeah. You guys, and I've been around both of you, and y'all have vastly different personalities.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit like about what it's like working with your brother all day, every day?
It kind of goes back to that, if he's the dreamer, I'm the problem solver by nature more than the other. And so if you dream something, there's a lot of, and problem solving may not be the exact right phrase, but there's a lot of things that have to be
right phrase, because to bring a dream to life, like there's problems that have to be solved.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to be figured out, and so that's where our pairing, like you said, we're different people on a lot of different things. But the way it meshes, it works.
Yeah, that's cool. Y'all have a good synergy, and like Sloan is, kind of, to me, a little bit more quiet and reserved than you are, and maybe not quite as outgoing, but you can tell that his wheels are always spinning, and there's always, all the times I've ever been around Sloan, like he's always talking about some idea that he's got or some.
Well, his track record makes me not doubt him, and I give him the benefit of the doubt in things that I'm like, I don't know. Because
so when you guys decided to start Royal Tire, he kind of brought that idea to you and your dad.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, he just saw the inconvenience and the problem that these customers are having to go through to find these other automotive shops to help facilitate the powder coating. Let's do it next.
So basically he's identifying the problem and saying, hey, Slade, I found this problem, solve it.
Yeah. Yeah, he can see, maybe he sees into the future. I mean, he's really good at seeing what potential is there. And then he envisions, I'm sure Royal looks exactly how he envisioned it when he thought of it. And so, this is what we need to do, or this is a good idea. What do you think? And then, me and Dad would fall in line, and then that's when we work on the structure and the plan and the financing for it, whatever it needs to be, and then put it into place.
Yeah.
He gets, I don't take any credit. I mean, I'm happy to have helped in starting all these, but I'll give him the initial credit of it was his idea.
Yeah. So his latest idea.
Yeah. So the latest idea, our sign company, we talked about it first, had been all, a few different locations on Highway 80. More recently, when we started WPC, that's where the sign company was, across the street in that location. And that location, it's a pretty building. It's got about 8 acres of land behind it.
It's a super cool property.
Yeah, it's got a pond and it's got good trees and some, meadows. It's a cool place.
Yeah.
It was a sign company, and it takes a lot of managing of landscaping when you have a place like that. And so my dad, he'd make signs during the week, and on the weekend he'd do, taking care of the not really the shrubs, but limbs that fall down or whatever. It's a job in itself to manage that property.
Yeah.
We unfortunately lost him a little over a year ago, and so the sign company, there was a decision to be made: does the sign company stay going, because it was him and 2 ladies that work for him, and it's a very small shop to lose the key figure. And
so that's a good example of in kind of like I guess it's like a little microcosm within y'all's organization that y'all built.
Yeah.
That little sign shop. When your dad passed away and it was time to make that decision about, well, do we keep this going? Do we close the doors? What was that decision-making process like?
It the doors would have shut if he didn't have kids. Because my mom, she's not a young lady anymore.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to run that company, and so especially let's just say it was just him and he had his employees. Well, it was still just a sole proprietorship DBA, and so if he vanishes overnight, and then all the banking and accounting and everything is built around him, it disappears. In our case, we have a strong family. We're all involved in the business, and so there was a decision to be made. It's a very small company. Do we just let it retire in its passing, or do we start to build it back up? Because at that point, you lose your key person, which. Fortunate for us, there's a lady named Heather that's worked for us a long time. She's awesome. She does a great job.
Yeah.
And
shout out to Heather.
Yes, shout out to Heather. It made the decision easy because we really do care about Heather. And if the sign shop at a minimum would just provide a good career for her and help my mom on her finances, it was well worth them. Continue to invest in it. But
it's all back to that why.
Yeah. But you notice the why isn't how many dollars I can make from it. It's how can we benefit the people that it impacts. And so when we answered that question, then we decided to keep it going. And so, we want to grow the sign company too. My dad, who's older, he was just kind of idling back, which is great. That's fine.
Yeah. That's what you're supposed to do when you're 60s.
Yeah. So now that, I get to help make those decisions, let's make it into an entity. I would love to see it the size of WPC. I'd like to see a whole art department and, just structure it that way. So it's got a lot of potential too.
So you've already got this vision in your mind based on where you've been with WPC.
Yeah.
Of where Rick Signs is going to head into the future.
Yeah, that's right. And Heather, we were driving to a trade show. She said, I've seen what you do with or what you were able to do with WPC. I'm excited to see what we can do in the sign company.
Yeah. So do you feel like, you have someone that manages Royal, you have someone that manages Rick Signs, you're going to have someone that manages the new thing whenever it.
Yeah. So we hadn't even talked about it. So
we haven't even talked about that yet, but my question is, do you ever feel like someone else might manage WPC and you go to a whole nother level where you're managing all of the companies that your family owns?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it's going. But I mean, there's so many shout outs I can make at WPC and Trey, Judd, Juan.
You guys have a lot of key.
Yeah. And a lot of them, I think Trey ticked over 10 years with us this year. Or maybe it's last year. And time flies, but we have people that have been with us a long time that do a great job.
Yeah.
And I mean, they get a big shout out too, because a lot of the opportunities and things that we are able to do are because of their hard work too. Mm-hmm. So,
I know Trey, I remember walking into your shop like after hours and you guys would be, you and Trey would be there working on something, and, I'd see your truck there passing by and I'd just swing in and say hello. You and Trey would be working on some part for some customer needing it yesterday, It's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
That was before kids, though.
That was before kids. It takes. I like to hire. I try to hire first on. If you had to pick between two people, one person is really good at what you need them to do, like they're a skilled operator, but they're questionable on their person. Like, are they a good person? You can't answer that question. They're great at this, but you're not sure they're a good person. Or the other person walks in. They're a great person, but they're not skilled at what you need them to do.
I'm taking the second person.
Take the second one every day.
Yeah.
Don't grab the first one. And so we've always taken that approach. We'd rather find good people and train them into what they need to do for us.
Because people can learn skills.
And sometimes you get lucky and you find one that meets both marks. But in our industry, there's not a metal manufacturer on every corner. So our labor pool with industry-specific talents is hard. You don't have a lot of that.
You don't have a lot of people out there that just have the skills to do what you need done. Like, you don't have somebody out there that like, oh yeah, I've operated a water jet for 10 years.
That's in 10 years. how long we've been in business, I think is 16 years or something like that. I think there's only been one person that walked through the door that was a water jet operator.
Yeah. So the rest of them, you're like, hey, you seem like a good person. I feel like I can count on you.
Yeah.
I feel like I can trust you. We're going to train you to do this job.
And if you do that, that's where, man, that's where it can take off.
Yeah.
Because if you got a tribe of good people, it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah, and they probably feel a certain sense of loyalty as well, because they're like, man, this person took a chance on me. I had no idea what I was doing when I walked through the door. All I had was my name and my integrity and my character, and they gave me a good opportunity, and I took it and ran with it. And
Yeah.
and you get somebody like Trey, who's kind of like your right hand man.
Well, and I go out of my way. I try to mentally ask, like, what? Look, I want you to want to come to the shop. I want you to be happy every time you come here. How can I help achieve that every day for you? Like, do you have the right tools? Do you have the right training?
Are you asking your employees that?
Yeah, yeah.
Physically asking that?
Mm-hmm. And some of them laugh at me because they think I spend too much money on tools and things. But like, if there's a tool you need,
now, if there's one thing I know about Slade, it's that Slade loves to spend money on tools.
Well, see, I don't get to use these tools, so it's not just for me.
I've seen your garage.
If I can help you, I don't mind.
You don't use those tools either.
Yeah. I will make that investment, and this is not a toot my horn moment. I'm just, if I could say what's important or what I've seen in being, trying to make a successful company grow, is that mentality. Like before I went on vacation, I knew it was going to be hot. We're coming up in the peak of summer heat.
Yeah.
The last 2 days, all I did was I went to Lowe's and I bought swamp coolers and hooked them up for every person in the shop. And that's like, I don't know how many swamp coolers we're up to, but I probably own 25 in different stations in the shop.
Listen, I remember you brought some of those to my daughter's birthday party.
Yeah, they're great.
And it was a hit.
Oh, yeah. They're the best. But, you can't climate control a metal shop. And so that's the second best thing we can do. But like, again, this is not a shout out to me, but I'm saying I think you'll have more success in a company if you put them first, obviously, and go out of your way to make sure they're first.
That's such a good point. And it's easy to lose track of that too, I think, because, you have an employee and, they're doing their job and you're paying them money. And if you're not checking in on them on a regular basis and asking them, hey, how are things going? Are you good? Do you have what you need to do your job? Is there something we need to be doing better? I think not doing that is one of the biggest things business owners do to shoot themselves in the foot, because, they're the lifeblood of your company. They're the people that make it work. And if they don't feel like they've got the tools they need, then they're going to be unhappy doing their job, and that's going to lead to people turning over. I mean, and I've never really even talked to you about this before, but do you guys experience a lot of turnover at your shop?
Honestly, we don't.
Yeah. And do you think it's because of the initiative you take when it comes to making sure that your employees are happy?
I think so. We obviously have people that leave.
Sure.
And
there's going to be some amount of that no matter what.
And typically, if that happens, I try hard to leave on a handshake in a good, just let it in on a good note. And, I guess some of our workforce, a lot of our guys are younger, and so they're ambitious and they want to see what other places are like. And so I'm telling you, I would tell them, look, I think we've done a good job of providing a good company for you to work at, but you need more experience in seeing if that's true or not. So I don't mind if you want to go work for this company. It's great. I wish you the best of luck. But give me some feedback. Let me know how we looked. And I would say almost every employee I've talked to, a lot of them come back later asking, hey, can I come back to work for you?
Is that right?
Because I'll say, how'd it go? What'd you find out? How was this place that you worked at? And it's like, man, this is a great place to be at. Talking about our shop.
They're just like, they come to you and they're young. They're 18, 19 years old. They don't want to go to college, but, they want to learn some skills. and they come to you guys and they don't know anything about the working world because they've never been there. And they work for you for 2 or 3 years. Like, man, I can do better, blah, blah, blah. And then they go off and they try to work somewhere else. And they're like, these guys are actually pretty good to work for.
Which is great. That's, although their time with us didn't work out, I'm glad that I gave them the perspective like that was a great place to be at. Although my time was brief there, it was this is where I want to be. So, sometimes we hire them back, sometimes we can't. And so
it just depends on what you need at that moment.
But I gave them a perspective of like, yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that spectrum, I've got guys that work for us that are, I think our oldest one's 78. He's the hardest working guy we have. He's an amazing guy. 70s and 60s and 50s. And those guys that do have the experience, they'll tell me like, this is my favorite place I've ever worked at. Yeah. So they've experienced life in other jobs. And then for them to tell me that, it's a great feeling to know that you were able to help facilitate a company that people appreciate and like they're proud to be a part of it. That's great.
So how do you build a culture like that where people look forward to coming to work? They love being where they're at. They tell you things like, this is the best place I've ever worked at. Like besides, giving them equipment and stuff like that, like what other things do you guys do that help facilitate that culture?
It's the golden rule. And if the world just knew the golden rule and lived by it, everything would be fine. But it's just treat others the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And I really think about that every time. And I don't care if it's a situation where I have to, if we have to write somebody up. Like how would I want to be treated in that situation?
Yeah, there's a way to do it with dignity.
Yeah, and so if you take that perspective across the board of business, that is so simple. It works. It just, how would you like to be treated? How would you want to come to work, or how would you want your working environment?
I got to be honest with you, man. I find that answer at the same time, like it's both brilliant and it's also a little bit disappointing because it's almost like, wow, I wanted some kind of like really
it's
awesome
simple,
technique but it really is dirt simple. It's like treat people how you want to be treated, and if you do that, like it really does work.
There's a tendency where people really focus on profits. But if you focus on the good work, see,
it always comes back to the good work.
What drives profits? Good work. So where do you want to focus your time? Do you want to focus on the profits, or do you want to focus on the good work? Because if you focus on the good work, the profits come with it, or the success.
Well, it's it goes back to what we said a while ago. It's like the whole nature of business is solving problems for other people. It doesn't matter what business you're doing, you're solving some problem for someone else. Whether you're cutting metal parts, powder coating wheels, cleaning houses, plumbing homes, teaching kids, whatever it is, you've got a problem that you're solving for someone else. You're creating value for other people. And the more you can focus on creating value for other people, whether it's your employees or your customers or, your family or your community, the more profit you're going to earn as just a byproduct, and
it's a consequence of good work.
The goal is good work. Mm-hmm. The byproduct is profit.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that chase the tail end, and they'll cut corners, won't pay their taxes, and usually it will catch up to you.
Yeah.
My dad, he always said, hey, "Look, we're going to pay our taxes, and we're going to pay more than we need to if we have to," because I think at a young age in business, he went to a company where he had to put a sign on the glass door or whatever, and he showed up there, and it had a lock. Or it had a chain around the door and a state of Texas padlock on it. And a sign next to it said, this business has been taken over, seized by the comptroller of Texas. You're not allowed to go in and no property can come out.
Because they didn't pay their franchise tax?
They didn't pay their sales tax.
Oh.
And, it could be the other way around with the feds, but I think that was just a moment for him it was enough of an impact on him that he mentioned it to me years and years later. It's like,
it must have been like one of those core memories for him.
It was. And you do right.
Yeah.
You do a good job. you be a good person. You pay your taxes when your taxes are due, and everything works out. And that company, I'm not sure exactly what the scenario was, but they didn't pay their taxes in that case, and they lost it all. And in fact, the building where our sign shop was in, where this new company is going to go in, the backstory to it, the company put in a landscaping, or the person put in a landscaping company. And that's why it's got a pond and water gardens and all that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, he was selling products. So he was selling the raw materials to pool companies and landscape companies. But he wasn't collecting, like they would say it's tax exempt. I'm selling this to somebody. But there's a document that you have to get from your customer. It says they're tax exempt. And if you don't, and you get audited, and you don't have a document that says they're tax exempt for all these invoices, you get to pay the taxes. And they might have been completely right. They didn't have to pay taxes, but they didn't provide you their tax identification.
Yeah.
You're on the hook. And so that person didn't collect all those documents. They were on the hook. And back then it was, I think, the number was like $80,000. They couldn't pay $80,000. They didn't have $80,000. They just started this company.
Man.
And they shut them down.
Wow.
And the bank took the building back over. And that was unfortunate. We didn't know that family or whoever it was that started it. That was the story we were told. And we bought the building from the bank. But that was
yet another lesson in, like,
play by the rules.
Don't screw around on your taxes.
Yeah.
Like, and pay attention, kids. Like, if you're doing a business where you're selling retail products, like, make sure that you're like up and up on what you need to be doing as far as taxes, like as far as sales tax, franchise tax, federal income tax.
In that case, he's probably an honest guy that just
didn't know.
Wasn't handling. And ignorance of that does not get you out of it.
No.
And they came down for it. But it could be the other way. Maybe you're collecting sales tax and from your customer, and you're putting it in your pocket, and not paying them. And then you're cooking the books to make it not work, or where it wouldn't show up when you submit your taxes. But the biggest thing is,
they took down Al Capone for tax evasion.
Yeah,
he killed all these people and did all this stuff and tax evasion.
You got to look at the big picture of what you're trying to achieve, and the shortcuts don't get you to the finish line faster. They typically take you back to the beginning. So, good. Just do it right. Take your time, do it right. Everything will be fine.
Yep. All right, so the new business venture.
Yeah, so when my dad passed, like I said, we were talking about his building. It's got water gardens and ponds and all that, and it's a management of its own. We relocated the sign company into a building a couple doors up that I knew about. You actually helped us with the sale, so thanks.
Yeah.
Very basic building. It's great. The layout was great. There's not trees that might fall on it. I mean, it's perfect for a sign company. It needs to be, low maintenance right now.
Yeah.
In doing so, we vacated the property of the original sign company.
Right.
And Sloan's vision is Big Rick's Outdoors, bro for short, which I think is pretty clever.
Was that on purpose, or is that just something that kind of happened?
It probably just happened, but it was great that it did. Because bro, it looks good on a hat.
Yeah.
Sloan has always been a passionate hunter and fisherman.
Yep.
And as a kid, my mom would take him probably after school to Winchester's. And Winchester's has a cool small building that had guns and knives and bows. And one of our neighbors was really into archery, and he wasn't an older guy. He was older than us. He was probably in his 30s back then. But he took Sloan under his wing and he taught him archery. And so, and also my granddad, so Big Rick's. Well, Rick being my dad, that's not that Rick. It's the Rick before him. It's granddad.
Okay, so there was two Ricks.
Yeah.
Your dad was Mr. Rick, and his dad
Big
was Big
Rick.
Rick. Okay.
Yeah, Big Rick loved to fish, and he probably loved. That was his true love. He would get in a camper and go to Toledo Bend, which is a big lake.
Oh yeah.
And we wouldn't see him for a month or two. Like, he would fish every day for months. He was in it. He loved it.
That's pretty hardcore.
It is hardcore. But he did that in retirement, so who cares?
That's cool, though, that he was able to do that.
Yeah, that's, he loved it.
That's kind of the dream, right? It's like to be able to To be able to go fish for a month and
Yeah.
nobody misses you, or go on a golf trip or whatever,
Yeah, just go have some fun. And so that's the reason for the name. So Granddad, Big Rick, was just, he loved the outdoors. And then Sloan going to Winchester's and seeing this, sportsman store as a kid and just loving the environment and, talking to the people. And then he was, like I said, my neighbor, our neighbor, was investing in him and archery. So he had it all over the place, appreciation for wildlife. And he always wanted to open his own store.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the success of our companies allow that opportunity to start another one, which is great. And so we have a perfect spot for it. We have this building that has a pond and 8 acres. And so
when he brought that up, I was like,
it's a great spot.
that is the absolute highest and best use of that property.
Yeah. And this was planned before my dad passed away. We wanted to relocate the sign shop, or my dad might have retired completely. And then that building was going to be used for that purpose. So it happened, which is great. And if you think of Bass Pro, just on a smaller scale with more thought into the product, because we have a smaller space, so we have to really think about what goes on the shelves and why it needs to be there. And then we have the acreage behind it. So, the plan is to set up an archery range, almost like a driving range at a golf course. You have these different targets in these different locations, and so you can set up in all these different scenarios. A lot more than you could do in your backyard.
Sure.
That'll probably be on a membership level where, we have a back gate that they can come in over the weekend, anytime they want, and use that range.
Yeah.
And that just complements the archery and sports store in the front.
So, like one thing that I kind of wonder about as you talk about that is like, okay, you're starting this new business and you've got this idea and, kind of trying to help like people that are, thinking like nuts and bolts. How do I start up a new business? Right? You're in the middle of it right now. So this is kind of fresh on your mind. You're setting up a whole archery range and you're going to give people unfettered access to it, whenever they need it. What considerations do you take into account? Like, how do you account for safety? How do you account for access control? Like, what do you do? Like, how does that work?
That's, man, you get in the weeds on that. And that's probably a follow-up one because we're at the very beginning of it. The next time we have the conversation, we'll have gone through it all.
Yeah.
So it's conceptual right now. Like the store is stocked. It's about to open.
So the store itself is about to open. But the archery range part.
Yeah. Later this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about the store. You don't have to get too into the weeds, but like talk a little bit about, the how you decide what you're going to put on the shelves. How do you find the products that you decide to put on the shelves? Like, where do you go to get that stuff?
Well, Sloan would answer those questions more than I, because he's led all that.
So I need Sloan on the next podcast.
Look, my hobby was aviation, and his was archery and wildlife and all that good stuff. So I've leaned on his experience to make those decisions, and I count on him that he's making the right ones. But in essence, in a limited amount of space that we have in that building, we want mid to high end products.
Yeah.
And if you talk to avid fishermen, which we know quite a few, they're disappointed by what Walmart and Academy and those kind of places have to offer. And so that void of what they're missing is what we're putting into the store.
Yeah. Because I don't really know of like a shop in Longview that caters to, I guess like there's a couple around, but I feel like there is a need for a shop that caters to, the fisherman that wants like that little bit higher end equipment, like that little bit next level type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm trying to, Tim Allen, the actor, he was in a show. I can't remember. What was the name of it where he was at a hardware store?
Home Improvement?
No. It's the one that followed that. It's another series he had.
Oh, that was, oh man.
Well, the premise is that this is a hardware shop that everybody hangs out in.
Yeah.
And everyone, it's almost like Cheers, but.
Yeah. I remember it was like it was like when I was in high school.
It was a place to be.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Well, that's what the vision is there, is that we're making the Cheers of this outfitters company, is that we have people that come in there that just want to, maybe they're not buying something. Maybe they just want to have a conversation with people that, appreciate things like they do. We want to have an environment where you just want to come hang out. Obviously, we'd love for you to buy something because that would help pay the light bill. But, above that, we want you to have a good experience.
So it goes back to that whole
Focus.
the big four.
Oh, yeah.
The price, how fast can you get what I want, and quality and customer service.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so, you're going to be definitely solving you're
the customer service, that's going to be very important.
Yeah.
The quality, we're making that happen with our purchasing decisions. Lead time, hopefully it's on the shelf because that handles the lead time. If it's something that we need to order, we have the right suppliers that can get it there in a timely manner.
Yeah.
The one that, we're going to strike out on sometimes is going to be that price because you got big box.
Yeah, you do. But the thing is like people like that personal touch.
Yeah.
People like going into a store that has a good vibe to it.
Well, especially like, let's say you want to learn how to shoot a bow.
Yeah.
And you go to Academy and buy a bow. You may or may not have people there that can teach you what you need to know about it.
Right.
Which is almost like buying a car and not knowing how to drive. You can really tear up a bow or hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing.
Sure.
So on the flip side, you go to a company like what we're establishing where you have the talent and the skill and the customer service that can say, all right, this is what you want. What do you want to know about it?
Yeah.
We're going to help you succeed with it.
Have you ever shot a bow before? No?
Yeah.
Hey, let me take you out back and show you how to use this.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, we got a test track back here.
Yeah.
We got a range where you can go set this up. And, our friend Max, his dad just recently retired, big fisherman. He already said, hey, I want to come work part-time there.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
He's a perfect guy for it. He knows all about fishing. He's got a great personality.
Yeah. Good talker.
Great. And so we're looking for people like that where, they appreciate, they have a passion for the sport and, they want to come share it with other people. And because of that, all those pieces that we talked about, I think it's going to be successful. I did tell Sloan at the beginning, there's a lot of mom and pop outfitting or sports stores that don't make it. So it's not going to be easy, but if you build that foundation right, it'll be great.
Well, it comes back to doing good work and assembling a team of good people, like you've done with your other businesses, and making sure that you're providing a really good experience to the customer every time that they come through the door, and making sure that they leave happy after they have come through the door.
Yeah.
I mean, and all the things that go into that, like, all the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis have to be geared toward those objectives. It's like, okay, what decision can I make next that gets me closer to providing a better price, a better experience, a better quality product, and faster service. So that's good stuff. So to kind of wrap everything up, one question that I would have for you is, like, if there's somebody out there that's looking to start a new business, because you started 4 of them now.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Ooh.
Like, what is the one key piece of advice that you would tell them?
It's not going to be easy. And I think you need to know that so that you don't have any expectations that aren't realistic. This is going to be a grind. Like, there's going to be so much sacrifice that has to take place for this to be successful. And it may be years of sacrifice.
30 years.
It could be.
Like your dad.
Yeah. I mean, really, yeah, that's right. It could go on. I mean, your goal is to make it as minimal as possible, but you need to be realistic about it. If you're trying to do something big and do a great job at it, it's going to be a lot of sacrifice. And I would say, especially if you have kids, is like, think of what you're about to do is not for you, but for their benefit, so that you control in your mind that, okay, this is a huge investment, but it's not for me. I'll make it because it's bettering these, the kids that I love.
Yeah.
And obviously some people don't have kids, so, but just whatever you do, just don't make it about yourself. If anything, you make it about the customer and put them first in it. But just, I don't think putting yourself first in any of this makes sense because it's not about you. I mean, in business, it's about the families and the customers. So
It's about solving a problem for someone else.
yeah, that's right. And if you do a good job, you get rewarded for it. So that, and then whatever you budget, just budget a lot more. A lot of people don't really realize, or maybe don't put a whole lot of thought into it. But, if you have inventory on the shelf, like, I don't care if it's fishing lures or steel, you buy that inventory. And sometimes your vendors, at first they sometimes don't, but they'll give you terms. Like, you have 30 days to pay me back. But you're usually not going to sell that within 30 days in some cases. And so now you have product on the shelf that you own, you paid for, but you haven't sold it. So there's always a bunch of money in limbo that is waiting to be sold, that hasn't been sold, and you've already paid for it.
Right.
You'll never get it back. You'll get it back if you sell the business or if you had to liquidate, but there's always limbo money.
Yeah.
And if you're...
And I guess once you grow a sizable business, that amount of money in limbo
it grows with it.
Can be pretty substantial.
Yeah, I mean, if you start, you have $1,000 in inventory, you grow and you have $1 million in inventory. There's always a chunk that's just hanging out in limbo. You never touch it. And so that's okay. I mean, this is part of doing business, but you need to account for it at the beginning because there's going to be this money that's untouchable.
So if you were to say, like, on a percentage basis, maybe if you can, what size of a chunk of money relative to, say, your revenue would you advise someone set aside to account for that money that's kind of floating?
I don't know if I've really put the math down to that. My dad, he was just and some of his thoughts were simple. It's like, just double it. Whatever you write down, just double it.
Yeah.
Because it's
like construction. Whatever time you think it's going to take, just double it.
Yeah. I mean, we went through hell in the recession, and you do not expect those. That's the worst thing about business is the things that you have no control of.
Yeah.
And
there's so many of those.
Yeah. Trump got in office, and he's a business guy, so you think business is going to be great. Well, not too long into his presidency, he slapped a tariff on China for their steel. Mm-hmm. Okay, I see the reasons why he decided to do that, but all of a sudden, steel went up 100% overnight.
Yeah.
The cost of it. And so when you have these parts that you're selling to customers that have a fixed cost or fixed price to them, you don't have the opportunity to readjust those instantly. And so all of a sudden, your material costs twice as much to make this part, and you're having to sell it for what you told them you'd sell it to, or what you'd sell it to them for. You can screw yourself. And you're not screwing yourself. The government's screwing you. There's probably other scenarios, but
you're getting screwed by proxy.
there are things way out of your control that you have no foresight for. You don't know it's going to come. Yeah. You just have to be prepared for it.
And by be prepared,
you just in that case, you have
some money sitting there.
In business, money is what makes things work. It's the lubricant to business.
Yeah.
And so you better have a lot of it because you don't know when you're going to need extra lube.
So the two key takeaways here are focus on doing good work and have more cash on hand than you think you really need.
I mean, there's just so many things you can't expect to happen that may and will happen. Just count on it. I mean, in our time, I think we've been through 3 recessions in our local economy. We had the big one, and there's been 2 other dips. We're in the oil field, so we're in the oil field belt. Anytime the oil field dips, we feel it. I mean, you were selling houses like fire last year.
Sure.
And what interest rates were 3.5%?
Well, 2022 they were.
Okay.
2023 it started really skyrocketing.
Okay. So in a small amount of time, your interest rates doubled.
Just like your steel prices doubled.
Yeah. And you didn't expect that.
No.
And it's not anything you caused. So if you're a new realtor and all of a sudden these interest rates start making your customers disappear, let's say you bought a building to set up shop in, or you invested in this your computer software, whatever it is. Maybe you have a little team under you. Those are things that you can't control that happen to you. So, I mean, you just have to think about that.
Yeah. And in my experience, like in dealing with that a little bit is like you've got to roll with it. You've got to be prepared to hustle a little harder when the times get tough, and really, look for a way to solve the problem at hand. And it all goes back to that whole problem solving thing. So many things in business go back to that. You're like, okay, the problem is that steel prices doubled, interest rates have doubled, whatever it is. How do I solve for that? What do I do?
And I would say if you're not naturally, if you would say I'm not a good problem solver or I do not like problems, don't start a business. Like for real. Like don't do it.
That's good advice.
You're going to disappoint yourself because it's not going to be fun. You're going to be pissed. You're going to be stressed. It's not going to end well.
Yeah.
If you enjoy solving problems and you're not overwhelmed by problems, do it. It's great.
Yeah.
You'll find satisfaction in it. If you don't like problems, don't do it. Please, God, please don't.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And I mean, I'm a very small business owner, but I do enjoy solving problems, and I think if I didn't, I would have a very different outlook on what I do.
Yeah.
So, man, I've really enjoyed talking about all this stuff with you. Hearing I've learned things about you that after being your friend for 12 years, I didn't even have any idea about. So, man, it's been a good talk. Thanks for being my first guest on the podcast. And
it's an honor.
I hope it's well received.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, we're all impacted by business, and business is a great thing.
Yeah.
But there's just you're always learning. So you're always solving problems, but you're also learning too.
Yeah, and I'm hoping people will learn from this and be able to take some valuable insight. And I think you've given a lot of that tonight. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. See you, man.